I was out of town for 5 days, just 5, and when I came back, someone had poured a concrete foundation right across my driveway. Not near it, not close to it, right across it, like my home just didn't exist anymore. And the worst part wasn't the concrete. It was the fact that whoever did it thought I'd just live with it. I live on about 7.5 acres out in northern Idaho, the kind of place people move to when they're tired of hearing traffic at night and want to hear wind instead. Tall pines, gravel crunch under your tires, and a long, narrow driveway that curves just enough so you can't see the cabin until you're almost there. That driveway matters more than people realize. It's not just a path. It's access. It's privacy. It's the one way in and out unless you feel like bushwhacking through dense forest and uneven ground. The land's been in my name since 2011, but the driveway goes way further back, late 80s, maybe earlier. It was already there when I bought the place, carved into the land in a way that made sense, hugging the natural slope so rainwater wouldn't wash it out. I've maintained it myself all these years, clearing fallen branches, laying fresh gravel, fixing drainage after storms, not because I enjoy it, but because if I don't, nobody will. For a long time, nobody questioned it either. The property lines were clear, surveyed, documented, quiet understanding between neighbors. Until the lot next to mine sold. They showed up early spring, brand new black SUV, still had the dealership sticker on the back window, city plates, spotless tires that hadn't seen a mile of dirt yet. Their names were Daniel and Elise Harper, moved in from Chicago, and you could tell right away they weren't used to places like this, not in a bad way, just different energy. Cleaner clothes, quicker speech, always on their phones like they were half somewhere else. First time I met Daniel, I was out clearing a downed limb after a windstorm. He pulled up slow, rolled down the window, gave me that polite, slightly forced smile people use when they're trying to be friendly but don't quite know how. "Hey there, you live out here full time?" "Yeah," I said, dragging a branch off the road. "Been here over a decade now." He nodded, looked down the length of my driveway like he was studying it. "That your access road?" "Sure is." He paused a second too long, then said, "Good to know," like he was filing something away. At the time, I didn't think much of it. People ask questions when they're new. That's normal. He waved, drove off, and that was that. Or at least, that's what I thought. 7 weeks later, I came back from a fishing trip up near the Selkirk Range. I'd been off-grid, no signal, just me, a cooler, and a quiet lake. It was the kind of trip that resets your head, makes everything feel simple again. I turned onto my road just before sunset, golden light cutting through the trees, dust kicking up behind my truck, everything exactly the way I left it. Until it wasn't. I slowed down halfway up the driveway because something felt off, not wrong at first, just unfamiliar. Then I saw it. Concrete. Fresh, pale, unnatural against the dark earth, stretching across the width of my driveway like a barricade. Wooden forms still in place, steel rebar sticking up like ribs, and tire tracks all around it. I stopped the truck, engine still running, just staring at it like my brain needed a few extra seconds to catch up. They had poured a foundation. Not on the side. Not nearby. Right across the only road to my house. I got out, boots crunching on gravel, walked up to it, ran my hand along the edge like somehow that would make it less real. It didn't. Behind the foundation, I could see my cabin through the trees, maybe a couple 100 feet away, completely cut off. That's when the anger started creeping in, slow at first, then all at once. I pulled out my phone, no hesitation, and called Daniel. He picked up on the second ring, calm, almost cheerful. "Hey, what's up?" "What's up?" I said, looking at the slab in front of me. "You poured a foundation on my driveway. I can't get to my house." There was a pause, not long, but long enough to feel intentional. "Oh, that," he said, like we were talking about a misplaced package. "Yeah, we thought that section was part of our lot." "You thought?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice level. "Daniel, that's my driveway. It's been there for decades. I have the survey. Another pause, shorter this time. Well, he said, tone shifting just slightly. Our contractor measured from the road. According to him, we're within our boundaries. I let out a breath, slow, controlled. You're not. And even if you were, you don't just block someone's only access. That's not how this works. He exhaled, almost like he was tired of the conversation already. Look, man, you can still get around it. There's open land to the side, right? Just drive through the trees a bit. That's when it hit me. Not confusion, not a mistake. This was convenience. For him. No, I said, sharper now. I'm not rerouting my access through the woods because you guessed wrong. You need to fix this. Silence on the line. Then a different voice came through, colder, more deliberate. If you really think it's your land, he said, you're welcome to take it up legally. And just like that, the tone of everything changed. I stood there for a second after the call ended, phone still in my hand, looking at that slab of concrete like it had just declared war on me. Because in a way it had. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was stuck outside. I ended up parking near the tree line and hiking in with what I could carry, but because my mind just kept circling the same question. How does someone convince themselves this is okay? Not a fence a few feet over the line, not a mailbox in the wrong spot, a full concrete foundation across the only road to someone's home, and then tell them to just drive through the woods like it's nothing. It wasn't just careless, it felt deliberate, like they had already decided what mattered more. By morning, I was done trying to process it emotionally. That's the thing about living out where I do. You learn pretty quick that feelings don't fix problems, actions do. So I drove into town, dust still caked on my truck, and went straight to a guy named Martin Keller. Marty's been handling land disputes and property law in that county longer than most people have owned their homes. He's not flashy, doesn't do big speeches, but when he looks at something and says it's wrong, you can take that to the bank. He spread my survey out across his desk, adjusted his glasses, and traced the boundary line with his finger real slow, then leaned back in his chair. Well, he said, almost amused in that dry way of his, this isn't even close. I raised an eyebrow. Not even a little. He shook his head. That foundation? From what you're telling me, it's sitting fully on your parcel. Not straddling. Not overlapping. Fully. I let that sink in for a second, because even though I knew it, hearing it confirmed hit different. So what now? Marty folded his hands, calm as ever. Now we give them a chance to fix their mistake, formally. I'll send a letter. 10 days. Remove the structure, restore access, or we escalate. And if they don't, he gave a small shrug. Then we make it a lot more expensive for them not to. That afternoon, he drafted the letter. It wasn't emotional, wasn't aggressive, just precise. Survey attached, boundaries clearly defined, and a simple demand. Remove the structure within 10 days or face legal action, including potential removal at their expense. We sent it certified. For about a day and a half. I almost convinced myself they'd come to their senses. I mean, once it's in writing, once a lawyer's involved, most people take a step back and rethink things. Pride only goes so far when reality shows up on paper. Then Marty called me. They responded, he said. And they've retained counsel out of Seattle, big firm. And they're not acknowledging fault. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable it almost felt scripted. What are they saying? That they relied on their contractor's measurements, he replied, flipping through the documents. And that any dispute over boundary lines needs to be proven through damages. They're also proposing we negotiate an easement. I leaned forward in my chair. An easement? Yeah, Marty said, calm but with just a hint of disbelief under it. They want to essentially purchase the right to keep that structure where it is, which would mean your driveway, or at least that portion of it, becomes legally shared or rerouted. I shook my head slowly, letting that land. So they block my access, and then offer to buy it from me. More or less. There was a long pause, not because I didn't know my answer, but because I wanted to be absolutely sure of it. No, I said finally. Not happening. Marty nodded like he expected that. All right, then we file. And just like that, it moved from disagreement to war, the kind that doesn't involve shouting or fists, but paperwork, timelines, and people in suits who bill by the hour. The thing that really got under my skin wasn't even the legal back and forth, it was what they did next. They kept building. While the lawyers were exchanging filings and motions, while everything was technically under dispute, Daniel's crew came back out like nothing had changed. Trucks rolling in early morning, generators humming, the sound of nail guns echoing through the trees. I drove out there one afternoon, parked right up against the edge of what used to be my driveway, and watched them work for a minute, framing going up on top of that foundation, walls taking shape, like they were racing a clock I didn't even know existed. Daniel showed up about 10 minutes later, stepped out of his SUV, sunglasses on, coffee in hand, like it was just another normal day. You really doing this? I asked, nodding toward the structure. He took a sip, unfazed. Doing what? Building on my land while it's in dispute. He tilted his head slightly, like he was explaining something obvious to a kid. My attorney advised me to continue construction until a court orders otherwise. I let out a short breath through my nose. Your attorney also tell you what happens if the court rules against you? He smiled, not friendly this time, more like confidence mixed with a little bit of arrogance. Then we'll deal with it. That answer stuck with me longer than I expected, not the words, but the tone. Like consequences were just another line item, something you sort out later if it becomes necessary. Over the next few weeks, that garage went from a slab to a full structure. Walls up, roof trusses installed, sheathing going on. Every time I drove up to that barrier and had to park short, grab what I needed, and walk the rest of the way in, it felt less like a mistake and more like a statement. Neighbors started noticing too. Out here, word travels quiet but fast. A couple of folks stopped by, asked what was going on. One older guy, Hank, who's lived down the road since before I moved in, just shook his head when I told him. City people, he muttered, not even mean about it, just tired. They think land works like paperwork, like you can just redraw it if it's inconvenient. I didn't argue with him. Part of me wanted to believe that wasn't true, that this was just one bad situation, not a pattern. But every nail they drove into that structure made it harder to hold on to that. 6 weeks after we filed, we finally got a hearing date. Small courtroom, nothing dramatic, wood paneling, a few rows of seats, that faint smell of old paper and polished floors. Daniel and Elise sat across from me with their attorney, sharp suit, confident posture, the kind of guy who talks like he expects to be agreed with. Marty sat beside me, quiet as ever, a folder of documents neatly organized in front of him. When the judge came in, Judge Halvorson, local guy, been on the bench a long time, there wasn't much ceremony. He reviewed the filings, looked over the survey, asked a couple of clarifying questions. At one point, Daniel's attorney tried to argue reliance, that their client had acted in good faith based on contractor measurements, that demolition would cause undue financial harm. The judge listened, nodded, then looked down at the survey again. The boundary line here, he said, tapping the document, is not ambiguous. Silence settled in the room, heavy but calm. He looked up, straight at Daniel. You built a permanent structure on land that does not belong to you, and in doing so, you obstructed the plaintiff's only reasonable access to his residence. Daniel shifted slightly in his seat, first real sign of discomfort I'd seen from him. The judge continued, voice steady. I'm ordering removal of the structure, full removal. You have 14 days to restore the property to its prior condition. Another pause, then he added, if the structure is not removed within that time frame, the plaintiff is authorized to arrange for its removal and recover all associated costs. That was it. No drama, no long speech, just a decision, clear, final, and impossible to misinterpret. As we walked out of that courtroom, Daniel didn't look at me. Not once. Elise kept her eyes forward, jaw tight, like she was holding something back. Marty leaned over slightly as we stepped outside. "Now we wait," he said. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like the ground had shifted back under my feet, just a little. 14 days. That's all they had. And I figured, surely, at this point, they'd finally do the smart thing. But I was wrong about that too. 14 days sounds like a long time, until you're the one waiting on it. Then it stretches out in this strange way, where every morning you wake up thinking, maybe today they'll start tearing it down. Maybe today there'll be a crew out there undoing what never should have been done in the first place. But day 1 passed, nothing. Day 3, still nothing. By day 7, I drove out there again, parked at the edge of that same concrete line, and just stood there watching. The garage was fully framed now, roof sheathing on, doors not installed yet, but you could already picture it finished, like they were planning to keep going all the way up until the last possible second, like momentum alone might somehow change the outcome. I called Marty that afternoon. They haven't touched it. He didn't sound surprised. I didn't think they would. So what now? We let the clock run, he said. Then we act. There's something about that kind of patience that's harder than anger. Anger gives you energy, something to push against. Waiting just sits with you, quiet, steady, forcing you to trust a process that feels too slow for something this obvious. Day 14 came and went. No trucks, no workers, no attempt to comply. Just that garage, standing there like a bad decision made permanent. The next morning, day 15, I didn't hesitate. I'd already lined everything up. Tony Ramirez, local contractor, been doing excavation and demo work in the county for years, pulled up just after sunrise with a flatbed and an excavator. You could hear the machine before you saw it, that low diesel rumble rolling through the trees. Marty showed up too, not in a suit this time, just jeans and a jacket, folder in hand. He wasn't there to argue, just to document. We'd already notified the sheriff's office the day before, not because we expected trouble, but because it's better to have things on record when you're about to tear down something that technically belongs to someone else. Even if a judge said you could. Tony stepped out of his truck, looked at the structure, then over at me. That the one? That's the one. He nodded once, like he'd seen enough already. All right, we'll make it quick. There was a moment, right before it started, where everything felt still. No wind, no sound except that idling engine. I remember thinking, this is the part nobody talks about, not the conflict, not the courtroom. This quiet second before something irreversible happens. Then Tony climbed into the excavator, the arm lifted, bucket angled forward, and just like that, it began. The first hit wasn't dramatic, not like in movies. It was controlled, deliberate. The bucket pressed into the side wall, wood groaning under pressure, nails giving way one by one before the whole section buckled inward. Then came the second push, stronger, and the frame collapsed in on itself, roof shifting, beams snapping, dust kicking up into the morning light. It didn't take long after that. Once the structure lost its integrity, everything else followed. Walls came down in sections, roof caved in, plywood splintered, and that clean, sharp outline they'd built so carefully over weeks turned into a pile of debris in under 6 hours. Concrete was the last part. Tony switched attachments, brought in a breaker, and started cracking the slab, each impact sending a dull echo through the ground. Rebar bent and twisted as the pieces broke apart, hauled away chunk by chunk until the line of my driveway started to reappear, rough at first, scarred, but open. By late afternoon it was gone. Not hidden, not modified. Gone. You could stand at the road again, look straight down that path, and see the curve of the driveway leading back toward the cabin, like it had always been. I didn't realize how much that mattered until it was back. Daniel and Elise showed up about 20 minutes later. Timing like that. I don't know if it was coincidence or if someone called them, but their SUV came in fast, tires kicking up dust, braking hard when they saw what was left. Or what wasn't. Daniel stepped out first, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked shaken. Not angry yet, just stunned, like his brain hadn't caught up with what his eyes were seeing. "What the hell is this?" he said, voice tight. "I didn't raise mine. Didn't need to. You had 14 days. That's when the anger hit him, all at once, like a switch flipped. "You destroyed my property," he snapped, stepping forward. "Do you have any idea what that cost?" I reached into my jacket, pulled out a folded copy of the court order, and handed it to him. "Yeah," I said. "I do." He didn't take it at first, just stared at it like it offended him. Then he grabbed it, scanned the page, jaw tightening with every line. "This isn't over," he muttered. Marty stepped in slightly, calm as ever. "No," he said. "It's actually very close to being over." Elise hadn't said anything up to that point. She just stood there, arms crossed, looking at the cleared space where the garage used to be. There was something different in her expression, not anger, not shock, more like realization. Daniel, though, he wasn't there yet. He filed suit about a week later. $18,000, claiming unlawful destruction of property, emotional distress, loss of investment. The whole list. It read less like a legal argument and more like someone trying to rewind reality on paper. Marty handled it the same way he handled everything. Steady, precise, no theatrics. When it came back in front of the court, it didn't take long. The judge reviewed the prior order, the documentation, the timeline, and shut it down almost immediately. "Your claim lacks merit," he said plainly. The removal was conducted under court authorization. That was it. Case dismissed. But it didn't end there. The judge ordered Daniel to cover my legal fees, every hour Marty had put in, every filing, every appearance. On top of that, there was an additional amount, $3,400, for damage to the driveway and surrounding trees caused during their construction. You could see it on Daniel's face, not just frustration this time, but something heavier. The kind of look people get when they realize they pushed too far, and there's no way to walk it back. After that, things got quiet. They finished building their house eventually, set back properly this time, well within their boundary lines. We don't talk. Not really. Occasionally a nod if we cross paths, but nothing more. And the driveway? Still there. Same curve. Same gravel. Same stretch of trees catching the light just before sunset. Only difference is now I notice it more. Not because it changed, but because for a while, it was almost taken away. And here's the part one still think about sometimes, late at night, sitting on that porch, listening to the wind move through the pines. If I had just gone along with it, if I had taken that drive around suggestion, accepted the inconvenience, avoided the conflict, that garage would still be there. And my driveway probably wouldn't be mine anymore. So I'll ask you this, because I've gone back and forth on it more than once. Was it worth it? All the time, the stress, the money up front, the tension with someone who lives right next door now. Or should I have just let it go and found another way in? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm genuinely curious where people land on that. And if you've ever dealt with something like this, I want to hear how you handled it. And if you want more stories like this, real situations, messy ones, the kind that don't have easy answers, hit subscribe. Because out here, things don't always go the way people expect.